I traveled from Boston to New York to attend All Elite Wrestling's Double or Nothing pay-per-view. I've been an AEW fan since the company was founded, but this was my first time attending one of their pay-per-views live. On top of that, this was my first live pay-per-view since Royal Rumble 2011. Not to spoil the review portion of this video, but Double or Nothing outdid that one by a fair margin. What you're seeing now is some B-roll of my train ride to South Station in Boston. I'll be honest, I've never done a video like this before, so I shot a bunch of B-roll with no plans for narration. I got to South Station about an hour before my train because I was paranoid about missing it. If I did, the whole day would kind of not happen. I got breakfast at the McDonald's in South Station. I got a McGriddle. For those unfamiliar, that's an egg sandwich where instead of bread, it's pancakes. It tastes good, but it makes you feel bad about yourself, so I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Soon it was 9:30 and time to board the Amtrak to Penn Station. This was a 4-hour train ride, but I was born with train autism, so rides like this are generally a pleasant experience. The train was super crowded. This was a holiday weekend, and tickets were kind of expensive because I did kind of wait on organizing my travel for this show. So if you do something like this, don't do that. Book your train early and get a good price. That'll also make sure you can actually get a seat. Again, this was a holiday weekend, lots of travelers. I kind of got lucky. After I got to Penn Station, it was a matter of getting to Queens, which is where both the show and my Airbnb were located. After a quick breather at the Airbnb, I decided to head over to the venue. If I'd been a little lazier with booking the Airbnb, I probably would have gotten one in Manhattan, which would have been a bad move this weekend. See, the 7 train is what'll get you from Manhattan to Queens, but due to some kind of construction, I think, the 7 train wasn't running in Manhattan. It was only in Queens. So again, I lucked out because from this point until my departure the next morning, all my travel would be within Queens via the 7 train. On top of that, the train stop outside the venue was only 1 stop away from around where I was staying. This is sure to make the return trip after the show easy and uncomplicated. Met's Willet Point was a little tricky to navigate out of, but soon I found myself on this little boardwalk that would have been very scenic on a less wet day. By now, it was only about 4:30, but people were already lining up to get into the stadium. Seeing that, I did decide to hop in line. I did not realize at the time that doors wouldn't open for another 90 minutes, but considering how quickly the line began to grow behind me, and the fact that 15,000 people would soon be funneled through this one entrance area, I was ultimately cool with my decision. Once I get into the venue, the first thing I like to do is check out my seat just to touch base and check out the view. I was in section 122, technically nosebleeds territory, but I was pretty happy with my seat. The seating was tiered, so the person in front of you wasn't obstructing your view unless they decided to stand up, which they rarely did. Soon it was time for Arcadiora to hype us up for the start of the pre-show, hosted by Renee Paquette and Mick Foley. With all respect to them and the wrestlers on the pre-show, I decided this would be the best time to hit up the merch stand. I usually don't go for merch at shows, but since this was a big event, I wanted something to commemorate it. I'm not sure if there was a second merch stand set up in the venue, but the line for this one was pretty long, about 30 minutes. Although, thanks to the stadium's layout, I was able to catch glimpses of the action while I was in line, so that was pretty neat. I ended up grabbing a commemorative Double or Nothing hoodie and this super cool signed Tekla print. After picking those up and some chicken tenders, I headed back to my seat just in time for the pre-show main event. And not to brag or anything, but on this night, I was in the same building as the Rizzler, literally rubbing shoulders with celebrities over here. At some point, Big Boom AJ started bleeding. I don't know how or from where, but he was real as hell for that. This was a fun, chaotic multi-man tag, and it was followed by a main event hype segment with Mick Foley, MJF, and Darby Allin. I thought this was a super smart move and made the main event feel like an even bigger deal than it already was. With that, it was time to start the main show, and it's time to start the review portion of this video. But first, if you made it this far, please like the video and leave a comment if you're so inclined. Okay, thank you. The first match was Cage and Cope versus FTR in an I Quit match. I don't know what I expected out of this match. Fun fact, the New York State Athletics Commission does not allow for blading in wrestling, so this would be a bloodless I Quit match, and I didn't really know how they were going to play it, but this match absolutely delivered. It was super fun, a super chaotic cavalcade of spots, and the MVP of this one was absolutely Christian Cage, giving one of the funniest heels and one of the funniest wrestlers in AEW a live mic in a match was sure to create some good bits, and sure enough,
I banged your mother!
Christian Cage delivered. This was just a super duper fun match to be in the crowd for. Singing Cope's entrance music was such a highlight of my night. And as far as an opening match being the match that you want to warm up the crowd, I feel that this one really succeeded. There was a lot of really fun crowd sort of participation in terms of the chants, a lot of super fun spots, a flaming table spot. This was a really good one. I do feel a little curmudgeonly in a vacuum about all the old men in the tag division right now, but I have absolutely no complaints about this match. Really good stuff. The right team absolutely won. The next match, however, may have been my match of the night. Konosuke Takeshita versus Kazuchika Okada. The crowd was absolutely buzzing for this match before they even locked up. Such is the reputation that precedes both of these competitors. And oh my god, they absolutely delivered. If the first match was fun to be in the crowd for because there were funny bits and funny chants you could do, this match was electrifying to be in the crowd for because of the wrestling drama that was going on. When Takeshita countered the Rainmaker with his own lariat, I screamed the loudest I have ever screamed at any event, maybe ever. This is just a super good match. It's an Okada match, so it starts out kind of slow. There's some brawling on the outside, some sick apron spots, and then it builds to this counter-filled crescendo at the end. And I don't know what was in the air, but on this night, Konosuke Takeshita may as well have been the second coming of Christ for how behind him the crowd was. I think we were all just super ready to see him topple this mountain that was Okada, and for some reason it was in the air that tonight was the night, and sure enough it was. Super duper good match with a super feel good win at the end. This whole card delivered really well, but I think this really was the highlight of my night. And it had a great capper in the swerve that happened at the end. Kyle Fletcher returned from injury to save his work husband from the Don Callis family, only to callously turn on his dear quote-unquote friend. They absolutely got me with this one, to the extent that, like, I was filming this angle, and when Kyle and Takeshita hugged, I was like, okay, great, ankle's over, I'll put the camera down, and then he turned, and I literally involuntarily jumped up from my seat. So shocked and heartbroken was I. Between the match and the angle, this was probably the best 30 minutes of wrestling I have ever seen live. Really, really good. Next was Athena versus Mina Shirakawa in the Owen Hart Cup. This was fine. It was, unfortunately, I think, the weakest match on the card, and why wouldn't it be? It had probably the least amount of build going in. Obviously, it's a tournament match, so you don't really need build, but Athena is never on AEW TV. Mina never wins on AEW TV. There were people there who were excited to see this match and supported both of these women, but it was only ever going to be so hot, and this was a replacement match anyway for Willow Nightingale versus Alex Windsor, so this was kind of inevitably the least exciting match on the card, but even with that, they still did really well. I think they still delivered a perfectly good match. You know, maybe it was more of a TV match than a pay-per-view match, but I thought it was good, and it was good to at least have a buffer between some of the more marquee matches, let's say. Speaking of marquee matches, Jon Moxley versus Kyle O'Reilly kind of wasn't a marquee match. This one was made pretty close to the show, only the Wednesday before. But Jon Moxley is the ace of the world. I like the guy a lot, so this was super cool to see. They delivered, as you would expect, a very technical, brawling-based MMA sorta style bout. Another one that started slow and built up to the end. And frankly, I was shocked to see Moxley win this one, but it does make sense. I really like that they gave Moxley this story that, you know, his whole thing with the Death Riders is always becoming better as a competitor, so giving him Kyle O'Reilly as this problem he was never able to solve and finally getting through that at the end of this match, I thought was a pretty cool story to tell, a pretty good arc. I would love to see Kyle take that belt off of Moxley, you know. I think you still have room to tell the story of, you know, Mox improving from O'Reilly, giving him the work, and then in turn O'Reilly improves and gets his win back over Moxley. I don't know if that's the direction they would necessarily go, but it's something I would like to see. There was definitely a part of me that would have loved to see O'Reilly dethrone Moxley here, but overall, good match, solid decision. After that was the newly Death Riders trained Will Ospreay versus Samoa Joe. What a fun match this was. Nothing complicated about how or why this match was good. Will Ospreay's awesome. He grew up on watching TNA and therefore watching Samoa Joe. I understand this was kind of a dream match for him, and it was super awesome to see. It started super hot with Will attacking Joe basically before the bell, and from there it never really let up. A super duper good sprint. Will is obviously amazing. Joe is just as good as he has ever been. This was a really good match to make because Will is obviously more a flippy guy, and Joe really excels when he has flippy guys to play off of and to, say, walk away from their offense. Really good match with a really understandable story, a really fun sort of sprint, and exactly the kind of match you wanted at this point in the card after, you know, Mox and O'Reilly. It didn't actually go over 20 minutes, which was interesting. It went 18 minutes, but it was definitely a match that felt long, so giving you a match afterward that felt a lot shorter was a really smart decision. Although I don't think it was the best Owen tournament match of the night. I will say at this point, my B-roll I was able to get really dips off. My phone was running out of battery, and I kind of needed my phone to get back to my Airbnb. You know, I probably could have found my way, and I memorized the address in case I did have to follow it via street signs. But yeah, I had to get a little more conservative with what I captured from this point on. Swerve Strickland versus Bandito was exactly the kind of crazy spot wrestling you want to see from these two guys. Bandito and Swerve are both really good wrestling bases that also have a lot of high-flying tendencies, so they played off of and complemented each other super duper well here. There were two spots in this match that made me go, oh my god, that's amazing, I never thought I'd see that, probably won't ever see it again, with Swerve standing on top of Bandito's shoulders to deliver a big kick and a Poison Rana from the apron to the floor. Oh my god, these guys are insane. And I think through the power of Crazy Spots and Dora, just barely eke out a match that I might put over Ospreay and Joe. Maybe. I think it's a pretty tight race, but both matches were super good. This match was super awesome. Would have loved to see Bandito get a win here, but I think Swerve absolutely makes more sense as the bigger player in AEW. Would have loved to see Bandito get a win here, but I think Swerve winning absolutely makes sense as he's more of a big time player in AEW, and his eventual match with Will Ospreay in the finals probably will be really good. So there you go. After that was the women's four-way, Tekla versus Jamie Hayter versus Hikaru Shida versus Chris Statlander. This match was really good. I think they overperformed expectations, you know? Sometimes, you know, you look at a multi-person world title match and your immediate thought is kind of, oh, this is sort of filler. And in the wider scheme of Tekla's reign, it probably is. It did a lot more to further the Hikaru Shida and Chris Statlander storyline than it did anything for Tekla. but this match was still really good. Just a really cohesive and well-worked four-way match. It really didn't look as good on the broadcast, but in person, when Sheeta cracked Statlander with the kendo stick, it looked like she really whacked her in the head, and it looked really brutal and really good. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this match other than, you know, the state of the women's division in 2026. Doesn't feel super awesome. Obviously, they're down Toni Storm, they're down Mercedes Moné. Willow just got injured, but it would be really nice if we were past the point where men's matches so clearly and unashamedly outnumbered women's matches on every show that AEW puts on. But that's a topic for a video in and of itself. For now, this match was really good. Tekla continues to be a really effective world champion. No complaints, other than the wider scheme of things, of course. Stadium Stampede was a super fun party match. I was really genuinely scared because in the last few years with Anarchy in the Arena, they've done the gimmick where, you know, they play music while everyone's fighting at the beginning of the match to, you know, give it a hot start and make it really fun. I was so scared that they were going to do that with Judas because I do not want to hear Judas more than I have to, but they didn't do that, thankfully. Instead, the babyface team all wore suits, and what we got was a pretty fun, bloodless sort of brawling match with a ton of plunder, some really fun comedy spots, some cool cameos. I thought Tommy Invincible was Brandon Cutler, and I still don't know who Tommy Invincible is, so I'm just deciding that that was Brandon Cutler in my mind, and I was one of like 2 people in my section who popped for Satnam Singh. It was nice to see Satnam Singh. This match was, pretty fun. This was easily the most palatable way to get Jericho on a card. It was the only context I would really want to see him in person, so kind of dodged a bullet there. But I think it's really telling that you really have to get 13 other guys in a Jericho match in order for him to be palatable in 2026. You know, I know that he can still work and maybe he has some kind of value to the company in sort of a backstage and mentorship role, but I think that Jericho's role as an on-screen wrestler and on-screen presence is more than run its course. I genuinely think that the sooner you can get this guy off of TV and out of wrestling programs, the better, because he just doesn't have it anymore. There is negative amounts of interest in actually seeing this guy. Maybe I'm alone in that, but I really do feel like I'm not. Finally, it's time for your main event, MJF versus Darby Allin. And listen, I don't want to say that I told you so, but I did tell you so, and a lot of you told me that I was wrong. Well, would you look at what happened? First, the match itself, oh my god, it was super duper good. This felt like such a huge occasion, and it was genuinely, as a longtime AEW fan, so cool to see these 2 guys who really came up within this company, who came to prominence through this TV show and was introduced to, you know, me and such a wide swath of the audience, to have the main event like this. There were no cameos from wrestling legends. There was on the pre-show, but obviously not here. They didn't have seconds. This was 2 guys who are the present of professional wrestling really taking their moment and having their moment, and it was super cool to witness in person and super cool to witness period. I loved a lot of the things they did in this match. I adored the multiple near falls spot that they did. I thought it was super duper well done, super fun sequence, super dynamic sequence. I am ashamed with myself because honestly, the moment that I saw that the set on the stage was scaffolding, I should have clocked, oh, Darby's gonna climb that and jump off of it, which surely enough he did. And MJF won, basically outlasting Darby and capitalizing on Darby's already broken body, as one probably would have guessed. You know, obviously, I thought this was the right decision. If you haven't already seen my video on Darby's reign and why he should have lost here, then hey, it's on the channel, you can check it out. All that I'll say here is that this match was amazing. MJF is someone that I am not always super high on. I think he has a lot of bad habits. He often felt falls back on in terms of promos and his character work, but I think he is doing some fantastic work now, and seeing that sort of rewarded with a third reign, it feels right. And I thought that this entire Darby reign was just a really effective arc told in such an efficient length of time. I think it's a triumph, genuinely. I think one of my biggest problems with AEW as a promotion, as a TV product overall, has often historically been a lack of focus. And so telling this focus story in such a constrained period of time really does feel like a major step for the company, and I really do hope that they can keep it up at least once a year, or once every 2 years. It would be really good to get these unpredictable Flash World title reigns where just a really good contained story is told. Of course, the crowd did really have their hearts set on MJF getting his head shaved bald. It is a shame that didn't happen, and a shame not to see that in person, but I don't think people generally walked away from this disappointed, because what was delivered was ultimately a really, really good match that had a really sensible conclusion. But even then, I think they did a really smart thing and hedged their bets and gave us a major angle to right off the show. Kevin Knight came out after the match to save Darby, supposedly, from MJF, but then turned heel on Darby, and I think this is a super smart choice for a couple of reasons. One, it gives you a major headline to end the show so that fans don't feel shortchanged, even though there was genuinely a lot of hype and excitement for seeing MJF get his head shaved, but giving them this, big twist still feels like a major deal, so you're not going to feel shortchanged. Again, I don't think people would have felt shortchanged, but I think this was a very smart way to hedge their bets. Second, I think Kevin Knight is absolutely going to kill it as a heel. I think he's been a great babyface for sure, but he is so good that giving him this major heel turn and immediately placing him in the main event world title scene is such a smart move and makes such a strong move toward your future, and it really is the main thing that sets AEW apart from WWE right now. WWE, the land of the 40-somethings all holding world titles hostage, so few rising stars under the age of 35 over there, and meanwhile here, MJF is under 30, Darby's in his early 30s, Kevin Knight is in his mid-20s. More and more, it feels like WWE is a promotion that feels so fixated on the past, while AEW is capitalizing on the present and preparing for the future, and this heel turn from Kevin Knight absolutely goes such a long way toward doing that. I thought it was a really strong note to end the show on, and hopefully it's something we can look back on when Kevin Knight is on his main event run in, say, a year or two from now, if that. And Kevin Knight is sure to have a really good feud with former tag team partner and current babyface Speedball Mike Bailey. Really looking forward to it. And that was the show, but it wasn't the end of the night. The ordeal of getting out of the building and onto the train was, to put it lightly, hell. I'm not sure if there was only one exit to the venue open at the end, but the vast majority of people were funneled down one path. Annoying and cramped, but whatever. But then, once we got outside, everyone was on the boardwalk because both the venue parking and the 7 train were at the end of it. The problem? The entrance to the train station, which I swear was open earlier in the day, was gated off. Yeah. Apparently, it only opens for special events. Apparently, this event didn't count. To make matters worse, the only way to the street and to the parking garage was via this little off-ramp that was literally impossible to see through the crowd. There were no MTA workers, no attendants, nobody there to assist this massive crowd, nor any signs to give us any idea of where to go. This massive crowd being crammed on this boardwalk, most of us with no idea where to go, felt pretty dangerous. I don't know how or why this station and venue function like this, but it sucks and really deters me from attending any future event at any of the venues surrounding Metz Willett Point. Mercifully, someone took down the gate in front of the train platform, so after some scooting and shuffling, I was nearly home free. And thank God, because by now it was nearly 1 a.m., I was so tired, and I had to be so bad. The 7 train pulled up, and the doors opened on one side of the platform, the side of the platform further from the boardwalk, aka the platform I, and most of us, were not standing on, because apparently both sides only open during special events. Go figure! So I, and many others, spent another 15 minutes waiting for the next train, this time on the right platform. This was the final complication of my trip. I passed out at my Airbnb around 2 a.m., got up around 8 a.m., and made my way back to Moynihan Train Hall. I got an egg sandwich on a biscuit for breakfast. Final thoughts? I am super happy I went to this show. There were people in the immediate aftermath speculating if this was AEW's best pay-per-view ever. Obviously, I have a bias with that question, but I'm not even sure I would go that far. I think New York's regulations are really an albatross around the neck of AEW, a promotion fairly well known for its deathmatch classics at this point. I think a show like All Out 2024 has more of a balance of what I like from this promotion. As for the trip, I'd probably do it again, but not alone this time. I'm glad I did it this once because I've never really organized a trip like this, and I am very anxious about being responsible in any way for the good times of others, but I really wish I'd had some company, especially during moments like the human pileup after the show. I also wouldn't jump at the chance to go to Louis Armstrong Stadium again unless I was assured that the exit and train situations would be figured out a little more. Still, the show was absolutely amazing. If there's an AEW pay-per-view coming to your area, I'd absolutely recommend picking up a ticket. This was easily the most fun I've had at a wrestling show. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought about this kind of video and what you thought about the show overall. If you want to see more wrestling content from me, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to support me further, you can become a channel member. For $2.99 a month, you'll get your name on screen at the end of every public video and access to member-exclusive bonus videos. For $5.99 a month, you'll get that, plus a spoken shoutout at the end of every public video, which will sound a little something like this. Thank you to my supporters but larger, TB Skyen, Stephen Gorman, Norman the Great Dane, Jack Kruger, and Yami Loves Wrestling. That's gonna do it for me. I'll see you in the very near future with a video essay of some sort. We'll see what it is. If you have a topic you want me to cover, shout it out in the comments. Alright, see ya. Goodbye.